A takedown in Texas. Can a federal judge in Fort Worth do to Obamacare what the Republican Congress couldn't? In the nation's capital, funding for the border wall has pushed the government to the brink of shutdown. Will the Democrats stand firm or fold to the 45th president? In the Mueller probe, prison time for Mr. Trump's longtime lawyer. Michael Cohen declares his old boss should pay too for years' worth of dirty deeds. Here at home, Carol Alvarado claims the state Senate seat, while Julian Castro launches a presidential run. Could 2020 be the year a Latino finally reaches the White House? And in the Bayou City, Bill King joins Tony Busby in a mayoral field set on ousting Sylvester Turner from City Hall. Who will muster the right stuff to prevail come next November? I'm Greg Grugan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, Republican strategist Jessica Colon. Next up, progressive commentator and attorney Nyanza Moore. In the 3 spot, State Senator Paul Bettencourt, co-host of the Three Amigos radio show on KSEV. Batting cleanup, longtime super neighborhood leader Tomaro Bell. Next up, healthcare executive and former Republican congressional candidate David Balat. And closing us out on the hot corner, Chicano activist and educator Tony Diaz. Let's do this. America's government, or at least significant portions of it, appears to be on a collision course for shutdown. President Trump is demanding $5 billion to construct the border wall, but can't get it with Republican votes alone. Now, Democrats have drawn their own line in the sand, saying they will not cough up the taxpayers' cash for a barrier they believe is immoral and ineffective. The entire stalemate was perfectly capsulized in a face-to-face confrontation at the White House in full view of the cameras.
The people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it.
Lawmakers don't get back from vacation until Wednesday, which means they have just 2 working days to come up with a compromise before funding for the federal government runs out. Jessica Colon, I'm going to you first. What happens here?
Well, you know, there's a little thing called political theater, and I think that we saw that on display there in the Oval Office. But what we also saw was that there's an opportunity to have a conversation, and there's one side that doesn't want to have a conversation about this. The Democrats can come to the table. This is a perfect opportunity for them to take the high ground and try to strike a chord and show America that 2 parties can work together, even if they might not like the guy they have to work with. My dad would always tell me, you don't have to like the person you work with, you just have to get the job done. And that's the bottom line here. And they just have to get the job done. This is in the Democrats' hands. If they don't want to do it, it will be on there. The blood will be on their hands. Tomaro
Bell's been aching to comment.
There was 4 people in that room. Yes. I need one question answered, because this is what blew up Facebook, Instagram, and everything. Who took Pence's batteries out? And he never moved. Never moved. You talk about don't want to have a conversation. He didn't say a word, not one word. And Trump got played. When you are an extemporaneous verbal communicator, such as myself and Pelosi and Schumer, he got him to say what he needed him to say. I'm going to shut it down if I don't get my way. Period.
Okay, Bettencourt, Senator Bettencourt, what's going on up there?
Okay, what's going on up there is this is going to be the first day of a long 365 days next year. And the 2 sides are not going to agree on anything. We're going to be talking about impeachment. We're going to be talking about anything but getting anything done at this point. But I'll tell you this, do not doubt the president's resolve on this. He's going to shut the government down if he doesn't get his way.
Speaking of resolve, what happens if the Democrats cave, Tony? Are you going to hold the line on this?
Oh, no, the Democrats are not going to cave. Well, mostly because they have the lower chamber now. And I think on top of it, you saw Pelosi, they stood up to Trump in front of his face. So the old tricks aren't working anymore. Also, I think if you got Ocasio-Cortez staring over your shoulder, Pelosi's got to come through and reject this wall. I think here's really what I wish they were talking about. I wish they were talking about using drones to watch the border. I wish they were talking about electronic systems to watch the border. I wish they were talking about facilitating the infrastructure to process the people that we've already processed. I wish they were talking about bringing employees to actually work for the families that need these workers. So at the end of the day, these are Trump's old tricks. This is like a rerun. If we're talking reality TV as a metaphor, this is a rerun. I know Trump is slowly decaying democracy. Now he wants to literally shut down the government. That will make sure that Republicans also lose more elections from now on. We just had a blue wave in response to these draconian, blindsided measures. America's woken up. There's not going to be any wall, and Mexico's not going to pay for it, and we're not going to pay for it either.
Nyanza, what's your read on this?
But you have to think about what the actual conversation was intended to do. It showed two things. If the government is actually shut down, only 25% of it would be shut down. It would not affect the shutdown of the Mueller investigation. That is protected. So Trump would still have the investigators on his back. One of the things that's important is that you saw in the room 4 people, whether or not they spoke or not, that were all trying to engage. But it looked more like theater, like she said, but only the president can bring the theater into the Oval Office, so that was his doing. We need to consider about Nancy Pelosi's position is that right now, Mr. President, you have control of the House and the Senate, and you have had it for 2 years. You've not done anything for the border. Chuck Schumer was very clear. We're not trying to shut down the government. You are, Mr. President. But at the same time, we need to be concerned about the people at the border, not the people on this side of the border that already have protection.
Okay, got to switch gears. Will the courts do what the Republican Congress couldn't? Friday, a federal judge here in Texas ruled President Obama's Affordable Care Act invalid, saying it's unconstitutional because Congress overturned the individual mandate requiring everyone to have health insurance or face a tax penalty. The ruling was on a lawsuit filed earlier this year by a multi-state coalition led by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton.
The federal government promised that everybody could keep their doctor. That didn't happen. They promised that the cost would go down. That didn't happen. The price has gone up. So I would much rather see my state have block grants or some responsibility for doing this. We'll do a better job, way better job than the federal government.
Friday's ruling could disrupt the health insurance status of 20 million Americans, and Democratic defenders vowed to fight the ruling all the way to the Supreme Court. David Balat, you're well-versed in the healthcare industry. What's your read on this?
The 55-page opinion by the judge basically hinged on 3 pillars. One was, did the 20 states that were the plaintiffs have standing? And that was determined to be yes. The number 2 pillar was on the individual mandate itself. Is it constitutional? Initially, it was based on the fact that it was a tax. Because that tax is now zero, it's no longer a tax. It's not within the scope of Congress, so therefore it is outside of what Congress could implement. So is it constitutional? No. Third pillar, probably the most crucial, is the individual mandate severable from the rest of the ACA? The plain language of the ACA, what Congress has said in prior discussions by the Supreme Court have said, it is not severable. Therefore, the entire law is invalid and must be thrown out.
Okay, Nyanza.
So we had to, I wanted to make sure I got the facts straight, because the Affordable Care Act might be flawed, but it's been the law of the land for the last 9 years. And when you think about whether or not you want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, typically a judge would go back and forth to see which items would make it work instead of throwing out everything. That's 10 million people that have pre-existing conditions that are relying on the system. If those people, it's amazing that it was done on the very last day to sign up on healthcare.gov, which was yesterday. But those same people will be protected this year as well as through 2019. And this is the same thing that the Republicans have been trying to do on their way out. And now that we've got one judge in Fort Worth, Texas, that thinks that he can rewrite the law of the land, it's not going to happen. It's going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. And because will be the second time that it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, don't think that just not on the first day of the 116th Congress taking office that they would just go ahead and put it back as a penalty. And then it would basically dead the issue from the court.
Okay, it goes back to the Supreme Court with 2 new justices.
Yeah.
Probable 5-4 outcome, probably that it's sustained. Now, let's go back over this, because Nyanza's right. This is a flawed law. It was flawed when it didn't come out of the House of Representatives as a tax, because it really was a tax. Justice Roberts was wrong on that. Now, the judges picked up on something, as David already said, that once you take out that individual mandate, you really don't have a law. And the bottom line for taxpayers is this. Everybody here, we can't afford to pay for this. We need a law that we can actually live with and afford to pay for.
Okay.
As a person who was nearly killed and that was all I had for insurance, the impact that this will have on 10 to 20 million people should override whatever you're saying. Because yes, I will not lie, the costs need to change, the drug costs, all of that needs to change. But like Nyanza said, throwing the baby out with the bathwater makes no sense. You can amend anything. And I don't believe that they should just end this and sever those people's lives, especially those who have children who need this desperately to survive.
Okay, I got to go to break. When we return, big-time attorney Tony Buzbee leaps into the battle between Houston firefighters and the mayor, plus our longtime colleague Bill King launches what looks like a fresh campaign to lead the city. Stay with us.